In the calm part of Lagos, where the streets hummed with quiet pride and generators buzzed like lullabies, Mr. George Williams sat on his balcony sipping hot Lipton and scanning the headlines. A retired banker with a deep voice and deeper ego, George believed one thing with all his heart. Money was the only way to survive. He didn't just love money. He trusted it more than people. Poor men love too hard. Rich men provide, he often said. His wife, Agnes, usually rolled her eyes and whispered, "God help these girls," under her breath. Mr. George had two daughters, Emily and Sandra. Emily, the first, was like morning dew, calm, graceful, the kind of girl who'd kneel to greet a visitor, serve food with both hands, and still thank you for eating it. She didn't chase money. She chased peace. Sandra, on the other hand, was fire, lip gloss, loud opinions, and a wardrobe that screamed, "I am not your mate." She loved the soft life and had no shame about it. To outsiders, the Williams family was perfect. A beautiful home, well-raised girls, a peaceful mother, and a father who had standards. But inside the house, there were silent wars. It all started one Saturday morning. Emily had been pacing since 6 a.m., clutching her phone and praying softly. When the clock hit 7:30, she took a deep breath and walked into the sitting room. Her father was already on his second cup of tea. She cleared her throat. "Daddy, good morning." He didn't look up. "Morning. Hope you slept well." "Yes, sir. There's something I want to tell you, Dad." He dropped the paper halfway. "I'm listening." She smiled nervously. "There's someone I've been seeing for about a year now." He smiled. "About time. What's his name?" "Henry." What does Henry do?" "He's a mechanic." The room fell into complete silence. Not even the ticking wall clock dared to make a sound. Mr. George slowly dropped his cup and looked up. "A what?" "A mechanic." George stood up so fast the chair screeched. "A mechanic." "Daddy, please." No. You mean to tell me that after raising you with the best schools, the best training, you brought home a man that smells like engine oil?" "He doesn't smell, Daddy. He owns his own small garage. He's hard-working, smart, God-fearing." "God-fearing cannot pay bills, Emily." Agnes ran out of the kitchen, wiping her wet hands on a towel. "What is going on here?" George turned to his wife. "Ask your daughter who she wants to marry." Agnes looked at Emily, confused. "What is the problem?" "She's in love with a mechanic." George spat, as if the word insulted his mouth. Agnes blinked. "Henry, you know him?" George asked sharply. "I met him once. He seems nice." "You failed her," George snapped. "I didn't raise her alone," Agnes replied firmly. Emily stood there. Her hands were shaking. "I've prayed about this. I've fasted, and I'm sure Henry loves me, respects me, and gives me peace." "You'll eat peace when rent is due." "I don't want to marry a rich monster. I want someone who sees me. I raise you better than this." "I know, Daddy. That's why I won't let go of someone who treats me right." George pointed at her, his hands trembling with anger. "If you marry that boy, I will not attend the wedding. I will not give you my blessing. And when you start suffering, don't come running back here." Emily's voice cracked, but she stood firm. "I'll marry him with or without your blessing." And that was the moment the bond between father and daughter began to tear. In the weeks that followed, George tried everything. Lectures, guilt trips, silent treatments. Nothing worked. Agnes begged. Sandra mocked. George fumed. But Emily didn't shake. The day of the wedding came. It was simple, held in a small church. No flashy cars. No asoebi. No fireworks. But Emily glowed. Henry beamed. Their love lit up the entire room. George didn't show up. Not even a message. Not a phone call. Not a blessing. When people asked him why he wasn't at his daughter's wedding, he simply said, "I don't have a daughter named Emily anymore." And from that day, he cut her off. No visits. No support. No calls. As far as George Williams was concerned, Emily had chosen suffering. Let her carry her cross. And as they drove off, Agnes stood at the gate waving and praying. But George, he stayed inside, staring blankly at his cup as the steam disappeared, just like the pride he once had in his daughter. 2 weeks after the wedding, the Williams family felt different. The living room was quieter. Agnes cooked smaller portions, and Sandra walked around like she was the only daughter that mattered now. But George, he hadn't said Emily's name since the wedding. Not once. When people came visiting and asked about her, he simply sipped his drink and changed the subject. Agnes couldn't bear it anymore. One evening, she entered the bedroom and sat beside him. "You haven't called Emily." George didn't look up. "I told her not to marry that boy. She disobeyed me." "She's still your daughter." "No daughter of mine marries a mechanic." "George!" She spat in my face. "After everything I did for her, I paid for her education, gave her a good life, and she threw it away for a man who fixes brakes for a living. She chose love." "No, she chose embarrassment," George angrily said. Agnes sighed deeply. "She called me today. They've moved into a one-room apartment across town. No furniture, just a bed and one fan. But she sounded happy." George snorted. "Of course she's happy. That's what love does to fools. Until hunger enters." She asked if we could visit. "Then go. I'm not following you anywhere." Agnes turned her face away, tears quietly sliding down her cheek. George pretended not to notice. Meanwhile, in that tiny apartment across town, Emily and Henry were building something that money couldn't buy. Their one-room space had no luxury, just a thin mattress, plastic table, and 2 stools. The walls had peeling paint, and the fan made more noise and breeze. But there was laughter, and warmth, and hope. Henry would wake up at 5 a.m. to open his garage. Emily, now working at a private clinic, packed his lunch in an old cooler every morning. They'd hold hands and pray, then go out to hustle. They were tired, but fulfilled. One night, Emily lay on the mattress with her back to the wall, watching Henry doze off. She whispered, "You know my father still hasn't called." Henry opened one eye. "Give him time. He'll come around." "What if he doesn't?" Henry turned to face her. "Then we build our own family, our own legacy." Emily smiled faintly. "But I miss him." "I know." Henry held her hand under the wrapper. "But one day, he'll see. One day, he'll understand." Back at the Williams residence, Sandra had taken full control of the spotlight. With Emily out of the picture, she was now the only daughter George would show off. And she loved it. She posted pictures of herself in lounges and spas, bought a new wig every weekend, changed her WhatsApp bio to soft life or nothing. And George, he encouraged it. Be smart like your sister wasn't. Bring home a man that can take care of you. A real man. Sandra laughed. "Daddy, just wait. I have something cooking." And she did. One sunny afternoon, she walked in with a man who wore perfume like cologne was oxygen. His name was Tony. Tall, bearded, sharp suits, expensive shoes. Talked like he owned half of Lagos. He smiled at George and called him sir with every sentence. George was impressed. He whispered to Agnes that evening, "That's a son-in-law." But Agnes, something about Tony made her uneasy. Too smooth, too shiny, like a floor that had been polished to hide cracks. But George didn't care. The man had money, and that was all he needed. Back in Emily and Henry's apartment, rain had started leaking through the ceiling. She stood with a bucket, laughing as water dropped noisily. Henry walked in soaking wet, holding a bag of groceries. "You're laughing while your house is trying to drown you." Emily grinned. "At least it waited till we got a bucket." Henry kissed her forehead. "Guess what? I fixed Mr. Hassan's Lexus today, and he paid double. Said I did better than his usual guys." Emily beamed. "You're the best." "Not yet, but soon." He looked around the tiny room. "I'll fix this. I promise." And he meant it, because no matter how poor they looked now, Henry was a man with a vision, a heart, and a plan. Something Tony didn't have. But no one knew that. Not yet. 3 months passed. Emily and Henry were still living in their tiny, leaky apartment. But things had started shifting, slowly, like cloud before rainfall. Henry had gained a reputation. His garage, once known only by taxi drivers and neighborhood aunties, now had SUVs pulling in. Rich clients, word-of-mouth referrals. People came because Henry was honest, affordable, and didn't tamper with their engines. One evening, while fixing a Range Rover, a man in a navy blue suit walked up to him. "You're Henry?" "Yes, sir. I heard about you from Mr. Hassan. I manage vehicle operations at Oil Tech International. We need someone like you for our in-house fleet. Someone with hands and integrity." Henry froze. "I'm listening, so. Full-time offer, good pay, and if things work out, maybe a transfer abroad." Henry couldn't believe it. He went home that night speechless. Emily made his favorite okra soup and sat beside him with a curious smile. "You're awfully quiet tonight." He stared at her and smiled. "Babe, I think something big is coming." She tilted her head. "Like how big?" "Like life-changing." Emily dropped her spoon. "Wait, what happened?" Henry told her everything. She screamed. She jumped on him. They danced around the room, forgetting they only had one bulb and a patched-up rug. That night, they didn't sleep. They lay side by side, whispering dreams under the faint hum of the fan. Meanwhile, Sandra's life looked perfect on the surface. She had moved into Tony's duplex in Lekki, snapped selfies in his kitchen, posed in front of his black Range, wrote captions like, "Soft life, no stress, just blessings." Her father was proud. "That's my daughter, classy and smart." Every Sunday after church, he would drive to Tony's house and return with small shopping bags, champagne, scented candles, foreign biscuits. Agnes, however, didn't say much. Something in her spirit kept warning her. She watched Tony closely. His eyes were too calculating. His smile never reached his ears. He spoke in riddles and never answered direct questions. "Where did you say your office is again?" she asked once. Tony laughed. "Madam, I'm into logistics. Import and export." "What kind of goods?" "Ah, madam, don't stress your beautiful head. Just know business is good." But Agnes was already stressed. Her prayers became longer. Her sleep became shorter. But there was nothing she could do. Months passed and Tony had officially proposed, with a diamond ring that looked like it belonged to a movie set. Sandra screamed, posted the video online with the caption, "From Miss to Mrs. Luxury." Mr. George danced and praised his daughter Sandra for bringing home a rich suitor. "This is how it's done. This is the type of man a woman should marry. Sharp, successful, powerful." He said. He called all his old friends, told them to clear their schedules. The wedding would be the talk of the town. And it was. The decorations looked like a music video. Exotic drinks, imported flowers. Sandra wore a designer wedding gown that sparkled under the lights. Her bridesmaids wore matching gold. Her makeup artist was flown in from Abuja. Mr. George wore a garter that looked like royalty. But Emily? She and Henry had quietly dressed up and attended the wedding. They came not for drama, but to show love. Family. They walked into the venue slowly, wearing simple clothes. Henry in a clean shirt and black trousers, Emily in a modest gown. They didn't sit in front. They stayed by the side, until Mr. George saw them. His face tightened. His jaw locked. He marched toward them in front of guests and photographers. "What are you doing here?" Emily held her husband's arm. "Daddy, we just came to celebrate with Sandra." "You're not welcome here." "Daddy." "Leave before I call security. I said I don't know you." Guests turned to stare. Whispers began. A few phones tilted up to record. Emily's face turned red with shame. Henry lowered his eyes. They didn't argue. They walked out slowly, heads bowed. Agnes saw everything from afar. Her chest boned, but George had made up his mind. "This is not your place anymore," he muttered as they left. Sandra didn't say a word. She saw her sister walk away in silence and adjusted her veil. That night, the internet exploded with photos of the wedding. Tony and Sandra, love in full luxury. Mr. George smiled proudly as he read the comments. He ignored the part of him that felt hollow. Agnes said nothing. She had warned him before, and she was tired of speaking. Then one night, everything cracked. A month later, at 2:43 a.m., the knock on the door was loud and angry. Sandra woke up with a jolt. Tony sat up immediately and reached under the bed. "Sandra, go to the kitchen. Don't come out." "What's going on?" "Just go." The knocking turned to banging. "Open this door. Police." Sandra's heart dropped. She ran to the kitchen and hid behind the curtain. The door burst open with a crash. Voices. Heavy boots. Chaos. "Where's Tony Roberts?" "Down on the ground." Tony shouted something, but it was drowned out by shouting officers. Sandra peeked and saw him on the floor, handcuffed. One of the officers looked around and shouted, "This house and everything in it is sealed by the government. This house is bought with stolen money and hereby seized." Sandra's knees buckled. She heard one officer reading out a list. Leader of a robbery syndicate. 15 recorded attacks. 3 fatalities. Multiple stolen cars. Fraud. Armed robbery. Her ears rang. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real. Tony, the rich, charming Tony, was a criminal. By morning, the news was everywhere. TV stations showed Tony's face. Blog headlines read, "Lecky Big Boy caught in armed robbery." And Sandra? She was sitting on the floor of her father's house, wrapped in an old wrapper, eyes swollen from crying. George walked in slowly and stared at her. She looked up. "Daddy, I didn't know. I swear. They took everything." His voice was empty. "I know I needed a rich man, but not a criminal." "Daddy, I didn't know. We laughed at your sister Booty didn't know yours was a disaster." "I didn't mean to." George sat on the edge of the chair and covered his face with both hands. For the first time in years, the great Mr. George Williams, proud banker, lover of wealth, father of daughters, wept like a child. His voice broke. "I chased away love and welcomed disaster." The news spread like wildfire. Popular Lecky Big Boy arrested for leading deadly robbery gang. Tony's face was everywhere, online, on the front page of newspapers, and on the evening news. The same man who wore silk agbadas and drove Range Rovers was now in handcuffs. His head bowed low as policemen marched him into court. The once proud Mr. George couldn't bear the shame. It hit him hard. His friends started calling, not to console him, but to mock him. "So your daughter married a criminal. You are a father-in-law to a man that robs banks." "Ah, it's a shame." George didn't leave his house for days. He sat in the living room, curtains drawn, his phone switched off. His agbada, once carefully folded, now lay across a dusty chair like forgotten dreams. Agnes entered the room and found him staring into space. "I told you," she said quietly. "George didn't speak. You mocked Emily. You chased her away. You called her husband a failure. Now, the one you crowned queen came back in disgrace. The same Sandra you push into a marriage of madness." George's lips finally parted. She said she found a rich man. "I believed her." "You believed his expensive wristwatch, his fake perfume, his lies." Agnes shook her head. "And you chased away the child who chose love." Just then, the front gate creaked. Sandra walked in slowly. Her makeup was gone, her nails chipped, her designer bag replaced with a nylon bag. She wore slippers that didn't match. George looked up. She fell to her knees in the middle of the living room. "Daddy, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen." He stared at her and saw the broken shadow of the glamorous daughter he once bragged about. Agnes rushed forward and wrapped her arms around her, as they both cried profusely. Meanwhile, things were changing fast for Emily and Henry. The call had come the morning after a particularly heavy rain. Henry stood outside their leaking apartment, looking at his toolbox, when his phone rang. "Hello, Mr. Henry." "Yes." "This is Joe from Oil Tech Nigeria. The board approved your hire. Please report to the office in Ikeja by Monday. A relocation package and official residence await you." Henry froze. You said house." "Yes, sir. Fully furnished, plus a company vehicle. Congratulations, Mr. Henry. When he dropped the call, he just stood still, staring into nothing. Emily stepped out holding a cup of Lipton. Who was that? Henry looked at her, eyes wide. We're moving. Moving where? To a house? Emily. Oil Tech just gave me the job. They said I'll be managing their fleet. They're giving us a house and a car. Emily dropped the cup. She screamed in excitement and hugged Henry tightly. That evening, they packed. The one-room apartment that once held all their struggles now felt like a museum of memories. They didn't cry, not because they weren't emotional, but because the joy was too deep for tears. 3 months passed. Their lives transformed completely. Their new home was a 3-bedroom bungalow in Magodo, fully furnished. A generator hummed outside, and the fridge was always full. Emily got a new job in a private clinic nearby. Her uniforms changed. Her accent became polished. Her confidence doubled. Henry wore crisp shirts now. He no longer smelled like engine oil, but like vanilla and ambition. One Saturday morning, Oil Tech called again. Mr. Henry, the company is expanding its garage services in the UK. You've been selected as one of our transfer supervisors. Please prepare your travel documents. He hung up slowly. Emily. She turned from the mirror. We're moving to the UK. This time, she cried. She was short of words and was grateful to God for how far they'd come. The next weekend, they decided to visit her parents. They didn't go in a tricycle. They didn't walk in with dust-covered sandals. They drove in a brand-new black Toyota Corolla with tinted windows and cold AC. Emily stepped out in a cream gown and heels. Her hair was styled in soft waves. Henry wore a suit, not too loud, but sharp enough to turn heads. Neighbors peeped from behind their curtains. Some gasped. Others whispered, "That's Mr. George's daughter, the one he disowned." Sandra opened the door and froze. She blinked twice. Emily. Emily smiled. Hi, Sandy. Sandra stepped aside without a word. George looked up from the sitting room and stood up slowly. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Henry walked in, dropped a small basket of fruits, and greeted respectfully. Good afternoon, so. George nodded stiffly. Afternoon. Emily walked to her mother and hugged her. You look beautiful, Agnes whispered. Thank you, Mom. They all sat down. The silence was thick. Then Emily gently cleared her throat. Mommy, Daddy, we came to say thank you. For everything you've done, even the hard lessons. George looked away. And we also came to say goodbye. George turned slowly. Goodbye. Henry took Emily's hand. We're relocating to the UK. Oil Tech has promoted me. I've been transferred. He said. Silence filled the room. Then George's finally broke it. You're going to the UK? Emily nodded. Sandra's eyes welled up. Agnes held her hands to her chest. George couldn't speak, couldn't blink, couldn't hide. His voice cracked. I don't know what to say. Emily gave a soft, understanding smile. You don't have to say anything, Daddy. George stood up. His eyes were glossy now. I chased you away. I mocked your husband. And now you're flying, while I sit here in the ashes of my pride. He moved closer to Emily and held her hands. Forgive me, Emily. Please. Emily held him and hugged him tight. I forgave you the day you closed the door. I just waited for you to open it again. Agnes wiped her eyes. Even Sandra couldn't look up. Emily stood. We leave in 2 weeks. But we'll always call. We'll always stay in touch. She turned to her mother. Mummy, help Daddy. He's still healing. Agnes smiled. I will, my child. And as Emily and Henry walked out of the house that day, the entire street watched, not in gossip, but in awe. They didn't leave like children who had been chased away. They left like royalty who had risen from rejection. 2 weeks later, Murtala Muhammad International Airport was alive with the usual chaos, trolley wheels squeaking, children crying, announcements echoing through loudspeakers. But near Gate C-23, Emily and Henry stood hand in hand, dressed in matching black coats, surrounded by 2 suitcases, a carry-on, and a heart full of memories. They were leaving Nigeria. Not as runaways, not as rebels, but as conquerors. Emily looked out the glass window and exhaled deeply. From a licking roof to London, she whispered with a smile. Henry laughed. We've come a long way, babe. She nodded slowly. And it's only the beginning. Back home, the Williams household had changed, and not just in silence. Sandra no longer wore lashes thick enough to cause a breeze. She wore peace, wrapped in simple anchor and humility. She no longer posted pictures of luxury plates and soft life captions. She now posted raw honesty, photos from her sewing class, moments with her mother, and quiet morning tea with her dad. Mr. George, the once proud man who disowned his daughter for marrying a mechanic, now spent his mornings reading devotionals and reading newspapers. No more preaching about money. No more arrogance in his tone, because reality had dealt him a blow too big to ignore. Tony, the flashy, loud, perfect son-in-law, had been sentenced to 30 years in prison for his crimes. The police seized everything: the mansion, the luxury cars, the electronics, the jewelry, even the bed he once laid on. Everything was declared proceeds of armed robbery and fraud. Tony now sat behind bars in a maximum security prison, forgotten by the same society he once dazzled. One cool Sunday evening, Sandra stepped outside with 2 cups of tea and handed one to her father. "Daddy, are you okay?" George nodded slowly. For once, yes. They sat under the mango tree in the backyard, the same place he used to count his expectations. "Do you think she'll call when they land?" he asked. Sandra smiled. "You know Emily. She'll call before they even reach passport control." He chuckled. "She's more than I deserve." "Me too." George turned to look at Sandra. "You've changed, Sandra." "I had to. Life doesn't reward pride." Then the phone rang. It was a video call. Emily's face filled the screen, glowing even through the pixelation of airport Wi-Fi. "Hi, Daddy. Hi, Sandy. We just landed in London." George leaned forward, eyes misty. "You look so happy." "I am. And you're safe." "Very." Sandra smiled. "Look at you. N.A. Real soft life." Emily laughed. "We're grateful. Henry's company sorted everything. They even got us a furnished flat and a temporary car till we settle." George cleared his throat. "Emily, thank you." "For what, Daddy?" "For forgiving me, for becoming the woman I was too blind to see, and for choosing a man not for his bank account, but for his character." Emily nodded. "I love you, Daddy. I love you more." Emily and Henry now live in Manchester, UK. Henry is a supervisor for Oil Tech's garage division in Europe. Emily works part-time as a healthcare assistant and runs a side business offering wellness services to African immigrants. They now own a cozy 2-bedroom home and are expecting their second child. Sandra runs a small online fashion store and has started volunteering with a foundation that supports women leaving abusive or deceptive marriages. She's found healing in purpose. Mr. George is now known in his community not for his money, but for his wisdom, the kind born from humility, not ego. He now tells younger men, never choose wealth over character. It might shine in the day, but it won't last a night. The next day, Mr. George sat in his living room, alone, the soft hum of the ceiling fan swirling above his head. The house was calm. No visitors, no music, just a quiet ticking of the wall clock and the fading scent of Agnes's cooking coming from the kitchen. His eyes wandered to the space around him. Photos on the wall, the empty seat where Emily once curled up as a child, the table Sandra used to clutter with magazines. So much had changed, and yet this room still held the weight of everything he nearly destroyed. Agnes walked in, wiping her hands on a towel, her wrapper tied loosely around her waist, her face glowing from kitchen heat and quiet strength. She sat beside him without a word. He didn't look at her immediately. Then he spoke, voice thick but low. "You held this family together." Agnes turned slightly. He kept staring ahead. "I chased Emily away. I celebrated a criminal. I judged too fast and too harshly. And through it all, you stood." She blinked, unsure what to say. George continued, "You visited Emily when I said no. You cooked for Sandra when pride wouldn't let me face her. You prayed for me when even I wouldn't have prayed for myself. He turned to her fully now. You are a good woman, Agnes. A strong woman. The kind I didn't appreciate enough. But today, I see it. Agnes swallowed, her eyes soft. I just wanted peace in this house. That's all I ever prayed for, she said. And you gave it, even when I didn't deserve it. George nodded. There was a pause. Not awkward, just heavy, full of understanding. George gently reached for her hand. I may have been the head of this house, but you were the heart. Agnes finally smiled, not just with her mouth, but with her soul. In that quiet living room, beneath the light that had witnessed years of pride, pain, and now redemption, they sat side by side, not as perfect people, but as two humans who had survived life's toughest tests and still chose each other. Because in the end, what remained wasn't who was right, but who stayed when it mattered. Moral of the story: true love is not measured by wealth, but by character. When we choose pride over people, we risk losing what truly matters. Mr. George learned that peace, loyalty, and humility are worth more than status or show. Emily stood by what was right and was rewarded not just with a good man, but with a life built on honesty and love. Agnes showed that silent strength often holds families together. And Sandra learned that glitter doesn't always mean gold. In the end, it's not who shines the loudest. It's who stands by you when the lights go out. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know what you learned. And don't forget to like, comment, and share this with someone who needs a reminder. Real love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stays. Subscribe to my channel for more unforgettable African stories that heal, inspire, and stay with you. See you in the next one.